In the quiet town of Eagle Ridge, nestled deep in the heart of Oregon, everyone knew everyone. The town was small, serene, and seemed to be a haven for those who wanted to escape the chaos of the city. The air was always fresh, the streets were lined with ancient oaks, and the local diner was a place where time seemed to stand still. But beneath the surface of this picturesque community, something sinister was lurking, something that no one could have predicted. This is the chilling story of Emily Watts, a 22-year-old college student who vanished without a trace, and the horrifying truth that was uncovered in the wake of her disappearance. A tale of secrets, lies, and a town's dark past that refused to stay buried. Emily Watts was the kind of person everyone admired, bright, ambitious, and with a heart full of kindness. She was loved by all who knew her. Her bright blue eyes and infectious smile could light up any room. She had grown up in Eagle Ridge, attended the local high school, and had just returned home after completing her undergraduate degree in psychology. Her future was bright, and she had big plans to pursue a career in mental health, hoping to help those in need, particularly in small towns like her own. Emily had a close-knit group of friends, all of whom were thrilled to have her back in town. On the night of June 12, 2023, Emily was supposed to meet up with some of them at the local diner, a cozy spot where they had spent countless hours during their teenage years. She left her parents' house around 7 p.m., telling them she would be home by 10. Dressed in a light summer dress and a denim jacket, she waved goodbye to her parents, who were sitting on the porch enjoying the cool evening breeze. But Emily never made it to the diner, and she never came home. When her parents, David and Susan Watts, woke up the next morning to find Emily's bed untouched, they immediately knew something was wrong. Susan tried to calm herself, thinking perhaps Emily had stayed the night at a friend's house. But deep down, she felt a growing sense of dread. David, who had always been the steady rock of the family, tried to reassure his wife, but the worry in his eyes betrayed his words. They called her friends, who confirmed that Emily had never shown up the night before. Panic set in, and they contacted the police, their hearts pounding as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Eagle Ridge's police force was small, but they were dedicated. Chief Anderson, a grizzled veteran who had seen his fair share of small-town troubles, led the investigation. He knew the Watts family well and felt the weight of their fear on his shoulders. The entire town mobilized to find Emily, with volunteers from the community joining in the search. They combed through the town, the surrounding woods, and every hidden corner they could think of. The community, normally filled with warm smiles and friendly nods, was now cloaked in worry and whispered prayers. The search for Emily turned the once quiet town into a hive of activity. Helicopters scanned the dense forests, search dogs sniffed through the underbrush, and neighbors scoured abandoned barns and empty fields. Every day that passed without a sign of Emily felt like an eternity to her parents, who refused to leave the police station, clinging to the hope that their daughter would be found safe. The only clue was her car, discovered abandoned on a dirt road on the outskirts of town. The car was locked, and there were no signs of a struggle. Her phone was still inside, tucked away in the glove compartment, as if she had left it there intentionally. Emily's favorite song was still playing softly on the radio, the eerie calmness of the scene contrasting sharply with the panic that had gripped the town. This discovery only deepened the mystery. How could a young woman, so full of life and plans for the future, simply vanish? As the investigation dragged on, detectives began to dig deeper into Emily's life. They interviewed friends, family, professors, and anyone who had been in contact with her in the days leading up to her disappearance. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Emily was described as a happy, motivated young woman who had been excited to start the next chapter of her life. But as they looked closer, a pattern began to emerge, one that pointed to a dark obsession that Emily had been keeping secret. What they found was a series of unsettling connections to an event that had occurred nearly 2 decades earlier. In 2004, a young girl named Lisa Harper had gone missing from Eagle Ridge. She was just 8 years old at the time, and despite extensive searches, she was never found. The case had gone cold, and the town had tried to forget about it. But now, with Emily's disappearance, old wounds were reopened. Detectives discovered that Emily had been researching Lisa's case. She had been frequenting the local library, poring over old newspapers, police reports, and town records. Librarian Mrs. Callahan, an elderly woman with a sharp memory, recalled Emily's visits vividly. She remembered how Emily's demeanor had shifted from casual curiosity to something more intense, almost as if she was searching for something specific. Emily had even reached out to some of the older residents of Eagle Ridge, asking them about Lisa Harper and what they remembered from that time. Some were more willing to talk than others, but most were reluctant to dredge up painful memories. The deeper Emily dug, the more it became clear that the town had secrets. Secrets that some were desperate to keep hidden. As detectives continued to follow this lead, they uncovered a shocking connection between Emily's family and the Harper case. Emily's father, David Watts, had been one of the lead investigators on Lisa's case all those years ago. David had been a young, idealistic detective at the time, determined to solve the case and bring Lisa home. But the failure to find her had haunted him, casting a shadow over his life and career. He had left the police force shortly after the investigation was closed, unable to reconcile with the fact that he had failed to protect a child. It became clear that Emily had stumbled upon something that someone wanted to keep buried. The closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous her situation became. But what was it that she had discovered, and why had it led to her disappearance? The breakthrough came nearly 3 months after Emily had gone missing. A local farmer, who had been clearing a remote part of his property deep in the woods, reported finding a shallow grave. The police rushed to the scene, and their worst fears were confirmed. The remains were identified as Emily Watts. The town was plunged into mourning. A vibrant young woman, who had once been the pride of Eagle Ridge, was now gone forever. But the discovery of her body also brought new urgency to the investigation. Forensic evidence suggested that Emily had been murdered shortly after her disappearance, but there were still so many unanswered questions. The most chilling discovery was what they found buried with Emily: a locket that had belonged to Lisa Harper. The locket contained a picture of Lisa and a man who was quickly identified as Charles Reed, a former resident of Eagle Ridge who had left town shortly after Lisa's disappearance. Reed had been a suspect in Lisa's case, but there was never enough evidence to charge him. He was a loner, someone who had always kept to himself, and after Lisa went missing, he had vanished from the town's radar. Detectives now had to find Charles Reed. They tracked him down to a small, rundown town in Northern California, where he had been living under an assumed name. The once respectable man was now a shadow of his former self, living in a dilapidated trailer, surrounded by reminders of his dark past. When they confronted him, Reed initially denied any involvement, but as the weight of his guilt pressed down on him, he began to crack. In a chilling confession, Reed revealed everything. He had kidnapped and killed Lisa Harper all those years ago, driven by a twisted desire to possess the innocent child. He had buried her in the woods near his home in Eagle Ridge, hoping that she would never be found. But how did Emily find out? Reed explained that Emily had contacted him, pretending to be a journalist working on a cold case. She had been relentless in her pursuit of the truth, asking questions that no one had ever dared to ask before. When Reed realized she was getting too close, he panicked. He lured her into the woods, where he ended her life, just as he had ended Lisa's. The town of Eagle Ridge was left in shock. A killer had been living among them for years, and no one had suspected a thing. The revelation tore through the community, leaving a scar that would never fully heal. Charles Reed was arrested and extradited back to Oregon, where he was charged with the murders of both Lisa Harper and Emily Watts. The trial was swift, with the overwhelming evidence against him leaving no room for doubt. Reed was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never harm anyone again. But for the town of Eagle Ridge, the scars of his actions would remain. Emily's parents were devastated, their world shattered by the loss of their only child. Susan fell into a deep depression, unable to reconcile with the fact that her daughter had been taken so brutally. David, though determined to seek justice, was haunted by the past and by his failure to protect Emily. In the aftermath of the trial, Susan found a measure of solace in working with advocacy organizations, helping families affected by similar tragedies. She became a vocal advocate for victims' rights, sharing her story to raise awareness and support for those in need. Her work brought her some peace, knowing that she was making a difference in honor of her daughter. The town of Eagle Ridge, once a place of peace and tranquility, was forever changed. Community gatherings became opportunities for reflection and healing, and the local diner, which had been a symbol of simpler times, became a place where people gathered to remember Emily and Lisa. A memorial garden was created in their honor, a serene space where townspeople could go to find solace and pay their respects. As the years passed, Eagle Ridge slowly began to heal. The community found strength in each other and in their shared memories of Emily and Lisa. The tragedy had united them in ways they had never imagined, and though the pain of their loss remained, they were determined to honor the memories of those they had lost by building a future grounded in compassion and understanding. The disappearance of Emily Watts was a tragedy that shook the town of Eagle Ridge to its core, but it was also a story of resilience, determination, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. In the end, the truth was uncovered, and a killer was brought to justice, thanks to the bravery of a young woman who refused to let a cold case remain unsolved. Emily's story became a poignant reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most serene places, and of the courage required to confront it. The town of Eagle Ridge, though scarred, emerged stronger and more united, forever changed by the events that had unfolded. The memory of Emily Watts, the bright young woman who had given everything to uncover the truth, would forever be etched into the heart of the community. Her legacy was one of bravery and hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times, the pursuit of truth and justice could bring light to the shadows.